if you're talking about communication and the way in which we communicate today, it is definitely changed a lot in the time from when I was a child to where I am today. As we're all a little bit older, we know that when we were younger, we communicate via the phone. That was rare, but you just go and speak to someone. You go to their house, so things like sending an email. We didn't do that back then.
Yeah.
We didn't send a text to Facebook. Now everything is so depersonalized. I think you mentioned this before. It's sort of like instead of actually laughing and sharing a genuine emotion, we send an emoji, right?
Yeah.
We literally send an emoji to express our emotion, and that's so damaging, especially for humans who we regulate emotions via a part of the brain called the amygdala, which allows us to actually attach certain either neurotoxin or certain neurochemicals to different neurons that go through the amygdala that regulates feelings. Right? It's so difficult for us to actually do that, to correlate feelings to communication, if we're just doing it with an emoji or a haha or like a quick Snapchat. It doesn't have the same compounded effect as like real human interaction.
Yeah. And facial expression. I mean, it's, we've got all this video calling and video conferencing now, which is great, but you lose so many of the nuances of body language and facial expression and just interpersonal communication. And I think that it's a disservice to everybody, of all the generations, in the sense that we've become desensitized. And I think that's where a lot of the bullying and bad behavior comes from, because we don't have the same consequences for what we say to other people. And it's been interesting to watch, people who lose friends over these political arguments now, and world events and such. And I technology is great, but to an extent, right?
Now, with cancel culture as well, that's even more perpetuated with technology, right? It's funny, so that I was speaking to a friend that I had recently made I appeared on this podcast, and we ended up staying in touch, right? And he was telling me that one of his friends recently blocked him on everything on social media, purely because they had a political disagreement. He made a joke about some political thing, and his friend, he reckons this was a friend of like 8 to 10 years, just completely stonewalled him. And I thought he was joking. I was like, sure, this was on the podcast too. I was like, you must be joking, man. And he's like, no, for real. Like, this guy just won't talk to me anymore. And it's incredible how easily we can do that. We can just censor each other just at the click of a button. It's not.
I know you have your own method of working with clients. Where do you think people need to start if they want to make some of these shifts in their own lives, like just learning to be a little more resilient and learning how to kind of survive the current culture we're in?
Right. So that's a great question. And NLP can come into play there, and it does if you apply frameworks. But the most simplistic way of really getting yourself geared towards lasting it through a difficult situation like right now, obviously with the Ukrainian war, news all over, there's COVID and all this stuff, right? How do you keep yourself motivated? And I'm glad you asked, because I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple of days. And it's really having something that you want out of life. And it's not necessarily tied to a material gain. It's more tied towards what legacy can you leave behind, right? Because at the end of the day, when we find ourselves motivated by money or cars or things, we all know that when we leave this planet, it's never coming with us. It's gone forever, right? But if we can transfer that focus towards maybe leaving something for others behind, for others to be able to use and create something positive from, that's where we can stay focused on a long-term vision. And it's one of the reasons is why I do what I do. And also because when things get tough, like it is right now, it's easy to step up and put yourself out there and really start to make some positive differences, because when everyone else is feeling down, you can't put yourself there too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you have that legacy, you have that idea, that positive impact you want to create.
One question that I got asking some audience members before this, what they believe, the language of beliefs, and how powerful beliefs are in reflecting your your perception of reality, your perception of self, your perception of others, perception of politics, war, religion, and self beliefs or limiting beliefs thereof. What is your take on the language of beliefs, and what specifically do you find that your work is involved in?
Okay, so with beliefs, I think that there are different kinds of beliefs. There are subconscious beliefs and conscious beliefs. We're not always consciously thinking of what we believe in, but they underpin our actions and our thoughts. But when it comes to beliefs that really get in the way of the work that I do, it is for, every client I've ever worked with, I always keep like a mental log of their progress. And every client I've ever worked with has always struggled with a limiting belief that they weren't aware of. It was always getting in the way of their actions and creating self-sabotage, creating limiting factors. And some were aware of it, some were not aware of it, but the key was to dig it up and make it clear. Because once you can see what that limiting belief is, you can tie it to an event, or maybe you can tie it to multiple events. But the key is to understand where that belief comes from, because when we pull that belief out, it means that now you realize that the future doesn't necessarily have to hold the same truth as the past, because that's never the same. The future is whatever you want it to be, right? That's consciously being created. The past is something that's already happened. So if you tie everything in the future to what you believe is going to happen based on past events, then you're just going to be repeating the same loops over and over and over again. And it's one of the reasons why I was a drug addict for so many years. I thought I could never be more than that. I thought I'd just be this guy, so much potential, whatever, but just nothing more than someone who could just run away from his fears. And I see this in a lot of people. I'm not saying everyone struggles with the same thing, but the limiting beliefs are always there, Johnny.
Right. That's interesting that you say that, because there's a lot of resonance between that belief and also meditation, and overcoming that as one powerful modality, and also doing energy work. The way of energy work is you're made to be in the moment, and although there's things that happen in your past that capitalize through the blockages in your energy, to be releasing that and to understand that and then to move forward, it gives the same message that you are not going forward who you were in the past. And every moment is the moment of now, the moment of present. Also working with like sound healing as well, and frequency, and the woo woo, as we called it before. Your frequency also can be either lowered, which is in the lower states of anger, greed, hunger, lust, jealousy, or the higher frequencies of love, of forgiveness, of grace, of gratitude. And so I believe that those beliefs are so powerful, and they can either limit you or they can strengthen you. But the first path is always to be aware of those beliefs, because if we're not even aware, but we're trying to move past something that we don't even know, that, in my personal, and you can of course disagree with me, that is always going to be where the circling, coming back to, is always going to be dealt with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. That's self-sabotage, man. Happens all the time. That's why being self-aware is so important. And I don't mean like, when we think of self-awareness, we think of some godlike manifestation of self-awareness. No, it's just being mindful of yourself. Being mindful of, say, if you got angry, why did I get angry? If I feel frustrated, why do I feel frustrated? Let's actually figure this out. Let's deconstruct it before it becomes a problem. And in the same way as what you're saying, the self-sabotage, the cyclical pattern occurs. It's because we're just perpetuating the action rather than thinking about it and stopping ourselves. And that's why meditation, it's cool that you brought that up, because I'm a massive fan of meditation. I meditate every single day without fail. I love it. And I would say it's definitely helped in my ability to self-regulate everything, really. Like whenever I'm thinking of something that I shouldn't be thinking of, I'll just think to myself, why am I considering this right now? When in the past, I would never have done that. You just go down a loophole where you're like, oh, this, whatever. Everyone knows that, right? But with meditation, you kind of catch yourself and you're like, hey, hang on a second. This is not a helpful thought. this is not helpful and why. And then you can go all the way back up and figure out why you're feeling this way or thinking this. And it really helps with actually maintaining focus in your day.
And I think I work a lot with my clients too, because I'm a nutrition and wellness coach. And one of the biggest things I find, especially with women over 40, who tend to be the people I work with the most, is we have this lack of self-acceptance, because we have, again, it's those limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough, fit enough, smart enough, thin enough, whatever enough that might be. And we can't accept that this is my starting point. It's like, I'd say this is where you have to plug the starting point into your GPS, because if you don't actually tell it where you're starting from, you cannot arrive at your destination. It's impossible, because you have to be willing to acknowledge that. And I think opening up to that and bringing awareness into, instead of avoiding and ignoring and denying, to bring that awareness into that sense of self, it is the path to self-love and the path to healing those things that determines how you show up in the world and every day. So I love that idea. Given your biotech background, I mean, can you make that connection with the biotech and how you apply that with what you do?
Not so much the biotech. The biotech was all about genetic studies and understanding how DNA works and how you can splice things and all that kind of stuff. For me, it's more of the neuroscience.
Okay.
Because I have 3 degrees. One is human biology, one's neuroscience, one's biotechnology. Okay. Yeah, I was just one of those guys. And
where were you when I was studying?
But the neuroscience is what I definitely use the most.
Okay.
In my current day-to-day, because neuroscience, you learn about psychology and you learn about anatomy and you combine them together. And if I take that academic knowledge and I combine it with my life coaching studies, because I'm still getting certified. I already have 2 life coaching certifications. I want to get a 3rd. I want to get one in CBT as well, so I can practice that. So combine it all together and I'm just learning more and more. There's no end to it. I just keep going.